common ground, never middleman, understand. This is Trippin' Jim, we do what we want, you do what you can. Can you comprehend? If I think, then therefore I am. This is not a test, y'all should've came with a plan. I'ma stand on this conversation, ain't no constant hating. You need to get to the point and we bringing the navigation. If it's a fork in the road, we'll make a lane in the grass.
You are now tuned in to the Dead Center podcast.
What's up, everybody? This is Trip.
And I'm Jim.
This is Dead Center, where we like to conversate, not constant hate, and get to the point. And today's point is Iran, the alleged attacks on tankers in the Persian Gulf.
Right.
About 2 weeks ago, Saudi Arabia claimed that there had been an attack on one of their tankers. They said that Iran, was it 2 weeks?
No, it was two tankers. Saudi Arabia claimed two tankers were attacked. They claimed it was Iran.
Weeks ago?
Yes, and they claimed it was Iran, and they provided zero evidence.
Right. They wanted the West to do something, and the United States was like, not so much. Or at least they didn't come out explicitly and say they believed Iran was behind it, anything like that.
Right.
Now, over the course, Thursday, two tankers, a Dutch and a Japanese tanker, had been attacked. Now, they weren't state-owned. They were privately owned tankers.
But they are oil tankers.
Right, correct, and that's the big deal. Right now, the United States has released video of Iran, what they say is the Revolutionary Guard of Iran, removing unexploded water mines from the side of from the hull of the ship.
It was one mine on the Japanese-owned ship that didn't explode.
Right.
And then the other side was the side that apparently the mine exploded.
Right, and I mean, you saw the fires on the ships. Neither one of them sank. But the United States has come out and said because of the weaponry used, the level of sophistication of the attack, and the previous attacks, the precedent that Iran has set with previous attacks, all those, and the video evidence they've provided, all those leave the United States to deduce that it is Iran's doing of these attacks. The UK, who, by the way, is without a prime minister, has come out and said that they believe as well it was Iran, which is it's hard to say right now when the Japanese owner of the I'm going to butcher the name if I try to say the name of the ship.
The Japanese owner of the oil tanker that was attacked, and only one side was hit, the other side was the mine that was removed. That same the owner of it's a Japanese-owned ship, Japanese owner, and he came out and said that the evidence provided was at least somewhat incorrect, because the crewmates that he's talked to have all said that a flying object is what hit the ship, and that they saw a flying object before the explosion. And the evidence and the videos and stuff, anyone that you talk to that's in military and knows how some of these weaponry works, they kind of are of the consensus that it couldn't have been a torpedo because it hit above waterline.
Right. You can look at the pictures on the hull of the ship. It's at least halfway up the ship. These two giant holes on each side of the ship. So, when I say giant, in perspective, it's probably like 3 foot by 3 foot.
Were there two holes in the Japanese tanker? I want to say there was only one.
I think I'm talking about the Swedish one, or the Dutch one. I'm sorry.
Right.
The Dutch one there was a hole in each side, or a hole in each side of the hull.
There you go. Tongue twister. But the point being made is that it also doesn't look like a mine was what did it, and that goes in tow with the Japanese crewmates saying, well, we saw a flying object before the explosion.
Right, we saw a flying object heading at the ship, and right as we were trying to make out what it was, it hit the ship. That evidence that the owner of the ship is providing, it's crazy, right? 30 years ago, if this would have happened, I have a feeling that we wouldn't have heard what the owner of the ship had to say. We wouldn't have heard what the Iranians had to say, which we'll get to in just a second. We would have only heard the United States saying it was Iran, and I'm pretty sure that we would have been gearing up for war if that would have happened. I mean, hell, in the 80s there were oil tanker wars, if I'm not mistaken. So, you're talking about a situation that has been volatile, and the United States exacerbating it by putting so much pressure on the Iranians. This is their only little bit of leverage left.
Right. So let's go a little bit into kind of where we stand because, 13 years of negotiation and an Obama presidency later, we had a nuclear agreement through the UN with Iran. And according to the UN, they were sticking to the deal.
Right. The UN, the International Nuclear Agency, there were there was plenty of people saying it.
They were, and they themselves were like, we've done everything you've asked.
Right.
But the United States, of course, was unhappy with it. Donald Trump himself said it was one of the worst deals ever, and et cetera. Yeah. So we backed out of it. And if you don't, I believe we did an episode, at least remotely, about the different deals we've backed out of and whatnot. But the long story short is, that's the quickest way to tick off a country is to tell them that we had a deal, and then
especially
within
a country
the next 6 years,
we've been at odds with for the last 60 years.
The
Ayatollah Khomeini is the supreme leader, right? The supreme Ayatollah of Iran, and the I guess Prime Minister Hassan Rouhani is the one who was working with John Kerry on etching out the Iranian nuclear deal.
Right.
That was something that now Rouhani is a moderate by Islamist standards. He was telling the Ayatollahs, look, we're getting things done. And we're bringing in the UN in order for the United States and the whole point of what the Ayatollah said was because the West changes and they are not to be trusted, no matter what. And Rouhani said, "Hey, look what we did, and because the Power Five are in charge, not just the United States. The United States can't just walk in and blow it up." Well,
enter Donald Trump.
Who just walks in and tries his damnedest to blow it up.
Right. John Bolton doing everything he can to start the fires.
Right, exactly. Right. And, we all know what it's about. We're trying to leverage and control the oil production. A third of the world's oil comes out of that strait.
Yeah, right around, and it's somewhere between 20 and 30%.
Right. Well, a third of the world's oil comes through.
Is shipped through that area.
That area. And it's it's only 20 miles long, or across. It's only 20 miles across from Iran to the United Arab Emirates. So Iran's the gigantic country on the eastern side of it. So they're absolutely within reach. They're within reason, in my opinion, to do it, because if the United States is consistently putting their foot on their neck, what other option do they have at this point?
So, yeah, we can get into motive a little bit. So we've talked about what we know. The other piece of evidence that I think is kind of key here is the United States didn't just accuse Iran of those two oil tanker attacks, but they also accused Iran of launching a ground-to-air missile to attack an American drone that was in the area. The Americans claimed that the drone was sent to view the damage so that they could gain intelligence on the attack. And the Iranians, while denying the attacks, didn't deny attacking the drone. Not directly anyway. They just kind of have blanket denied, but they straight up said this wasn't them, that's not what they do, blah, blah, blah.
Ayatollah Khomeini came out and said, we will never trust the West again. We will never negotiate with them
when
again.
When it comes to this exact...
Right.
So
what happened last Thursday was beyond suspicious.
The United States has a little bit of a history
of
flags.
Using false flags. We'll just use that term because it's what it is.
Yeah. So... getting right into it, the Japanese actually had foreign ministers in Iran meeting with the leaders of Iran, and that was the time that they chose to apparently attack these ships, one of which was a Japanese-owned ship.
Right.
It doesn't seem to add up. The whole reason that meeting was happening was for the Japanese to be there to talk peace, to try to be like, hey, we need to simmer down because, we're in between you guys, et cetera. And we also are oil dependent. Most developed countries are. So there's the idea, the United States at least is claiming that they're thumbing their nose into these or towards these discussions by doing these attacks during those talks.
Right.
Essentially saying, nope, we're absolutely not going to do it. We want war.
It's not the MO of
which is the opposite of what Iran's been saying for 5 to 10 years.
The United States has said, for other than maybe maybe upper levels of intelligence in the Obama administration, but the United States has tried to portray Iran as state-sponsored terror. That is just what they are. They have no interest in human life, human rights, nothing like that. That's what the United States' upper echelon military leaders have tried to portray them as. Why in the world would the state-sponsored terror that they've been describing attack a tanker while they're trying to talk peace negotiations with the foreign minister's leader in Iran?
It's the perception of evil. I mean,
Right.
So either the United States, and I guess the UK is the only one backing us up in this, but either we are correct and Iran is literally just saying, screw you all, this is war, which is just not what they're saying. Publicly anyway.
Right.
Like, I feel like if you're going to make that stance and you're going to do it in such a way that it's that public and it's at that timing, like at that moment you come out and go, see, we told you. Like we're not gonna stand for this, because
They wouldn't
that's
have
what
had
that
guy
that's
from
the only,
Japan in there.
The only thing that it could be is a flex. Like, hey, we control this strait. We control the flow of oil through here. Like, that's what the United States is trying to portray them as doing, saying, yeah, we're not gonna do anything. We're not gonna negotiate. We're just gonna flex on this strait and pump up the price of oil or whatever. And on the other hand, there's the idea that the United States has reason to get into this war. Granted, that is kind of hard to press. It really is. The only thing you could really point to is that Donald Trump as commander-in-chief is making this all happen through the military so that he's a wartime president during re-election. That is, it sounds conspiracy theory-esque, but really you can't think of another reason for the United States to get into this war.
Right. Well, Donald Trump's not looking good in the polls, and the Ayatollahs have come out and said if nothing's changed as far as sanctions, and I mean, we're like, let's not forget the backdrop. I mean, there's more motive for Iran. We're essentially putting an embargo on them right now. Anybody that does business with them gets sanctioned.
Which is why the only option for Iran, the only flex they have,
is this strait.
Exactly. So that's why, to the United States' government's defense, or to their intelligence, I guess, if we want to call it a false flag, but that is the only thing Iran would be able to do. If that is the route they wanted to go, that is the only way they could go. And that's a big piece of evidence. But at the same time, I don't think the United States has enough reasoning themselves, just our self-interest, America first, make America great again, whatever. I don't think that's the only thing I could think of is Bolton and Trump and Pompeo trying to keep Trump in power through 2020. That's the only thing I could think of. And as sinister as you would like to make the Trump administration, I feel like that's a stretch, personally. There are those, I'm sure, out there that are listening right now that do not think that's a stretch.
I don't think Trump necessarily wants it. However, Trump is somebody who feels like all press is good press. So if Pompeo and Bolton can orchestrate it, I'm not sure he would be opposed to it if it fell the dominoes fell in the right spot. Especially when the Ayatollahs have come out and said, look, if this doesn't change in the next month, the next time we're supposed to re-sign for this nuclear deal because the deal is still on with the rest of the Power Five.
Right.
The United States pulled out their part of it.
Right.
But the United States controls the money that we have seized. So if the sanctions aren't relieved, the Ayatollahs have come out and said, in July, we're going to start enriching uranium again.
Right.
And we're going to just back out of the
Try to get a nuclear
Right.
deterrent.
And at that point, you better believe Mike Pompeo and John Bolton will say,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, enough's enough. We're going in.
Yeah.
We're going in. It's
So-
a perfect storm.
So as much as those two are chomping at the bit to get into this war,
Well,
I don't think the United States as an entity, I don't think Congress, I don't think that Donald Trump himself really has any true motive really to get in there. Now, don't get me wrong.
Other than oil.
Stars align. You have the oil, you have the power play, you have the presidency. Maybe
You're turning a hostile nation even more volatile.
right.
I mean-
Maybe but you kind of have to. You're a little bit fragmented right now. You got Venezuela going on. You got you got Syria going on. You have the Trump neighborhood opening up in the Gaza. Gaza Heights? No, what is it? The Heights.
Golan Heights.
Golan Heights. Thank you. I don't know if you saw that news story, but
No, I didn't, but it's
then
not.
he's trying to open up like Trump land or something. Anyway, my point is that was supposed to be a segue.
Go to Trump land. Hold on, wait a minute. Go to Trump land and watch Al Qaeda fighters fight from your your 20-story balcony. Come on, man, that's ridiculous.
Watch the fireworks from your penthouse.
Exactly.
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, because you really want to go and build a neighborhood in your name in a conflicted,
The Golan Heights is where Al Qaeda in Syria have been fighting.
right, and all recently Trump has recognized it as part of Israel, and now apparently they're going to expand.
We did an
into
episode
it.
on that. Y'all check it out.
But so that was supposed to be a segue. It was terrible, but it was supposed to be a segue into the idea that there are other people, other players that could have done this to bring the United States into war with Iran, because 3 off the top of my head, one of them being the United
Arab Emirates.
Arab Emirates, being someone who has just claimed it was them that claimed that they had the tankers attacked. Or
It was
that
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. Well, there's another one.
Right.
So
they're just as bad, if not worse.
Yeah, we have the United Arab Emirates, we have Saudi Arabia, we have Israel. These are all countries that would love to have the United States want to get into a war with Iran, and all of them would back the United States in that war.
Look, and I don't want look for anybody out there that thinks we're just beating up on the United States government. I'm not going to sit here and just bash my country. However, we are in the age of information. I love saying it because we can look up at our fingertips anything that's ever happened at any time. Saudi Arabia is teaching Wahhabism to their kids and stuff like that.
We don't have to go into the evils
I'm not
of these
trying to go
countries.
into it. I'm not getting into it. I'm saying the United States government is working with countries that are doing just as bad, if not worse, than Iran. And they are trying to portray Iran as the bad guys when Iran is the most oil-rich out of the 4. That's what the issue is. Any other thing is misguided, in my opinion. And that's all I'm getting at.
I understand, and I'm not here to bash the United States government either. I'm just saying, in my personal opinion, this is either the United States, for whatever reason. Like I said, there's multiple reasons. None of them seem big enough to get into this war. Either it's the United States doing the false flag, or it's Iran actually doing these attacks because it's the only method of outlash they have, right? They've been lashing out because it's the only method they have to say, hey, we're serious and you don't want to mess with us.
And in my opinion, that seems the most likely. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case, but it does seem the most likely when, especially when in a month, you've already made the proclamation that you're going to go back to enriching oil if none of this stops, as far as the sanctions and stuff are concerned. Because when you sanction a country, you also sanction the people, because you're putting a chokehold on the economic situation, and people can't afford things and make money, and you're hurting your people. So of course, if my people were starving because of something another country was doing, and they relied on what's going through a strait that I controlled,
you're going to flex on them.
Right, exactly.
I get it. Exactly. However, would you follow that up with denying it?
No, I wouldn't, and that's why I'm questioning it.
So, in my opinion, the most likely scenario is that someone such as Saudi Arabia, who has already seemed to try a few weeks ago without any evidence, someone like Saudi Arabia or Israel, or I don't think the the UAE, can I call them that?
That's what a lot of people call them.
I don't think the UAE really has that much motive within themselves, other than being in the area affected.
Well, Saudi Arabia,
in my opinion, Saudi Arabia 1, Israel 2, as far as candidates for this being a false flag. And both of them, it would be a whole 20-minute discussion about how much motive they have to want the United States to go to war with Iran.
Right.
Like,
Absolutely.
It is obvious that they would be more than motivated to do something
you're
like
right.
this.
You're right. And I guess what I mean when I say that I think that the Iran thing is the most likely is that at the moment, with the sanctions and stuff like that, Iran has the most pressing motive. Doesn't mean that that's the case, especially when we've got disputed evidence coming directly from the owner of the tanker. So it's up in the air, unfortunately. But we are in the age of information, and we're going to find out in the next couple of weeks or month who did this, especially come July 17th, I think the date is, when Iran has had enough. And honestly, this feels like, I mean, you said earlier that you don't think Trump wants to, and I said it as well. However, like, you want to talk about a 4D chess game to try to stay in power, a false flag to get Iran to start enriching uranium in order to invade, it lines up. The logic follows. So, yeah, unfortunately, I don't have anything more about that.
Would you put the United States as a higher candidate than Israel or Saudi Arabia to do this?
The United States would. I feel like the United States would give Israel or Saudi Arabia the resources to make this happen. It would be.
So it would be something like a proxy within a proxy.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's totally doable. I mean,
right.
I wouldn't put that past.
If we're gonna, I mean, I
but
don't
again,
know.
we're just sitting here. Not only are we're not insulting the intelligence of the government.
This is one thing we haven't talked about. 2 weeks ago, the USS Abraham Lincoln went and stationed right outside of the Strait of Hormuz. Mm-hmm. So we have a big-ass weapon ship right outside of that. So the United States essentially giving the resources to the countries that could be carrying this out isn't that far-fetched. It's just not. It's just not. I don't know. Is that where you want to leave it today?
I'm going to leave it as, if this leads to war with Iran and Iran the entire time continues to play this defensive, we haven't done anything, we've been doing everything right all the way up until shots are fired, mm-hmm. I think that I would at that point be 99.9% sure it was a false flag. In my humble opinion and looking at history,
nothing I can say can too much
eventually
disagree.
if you're actually making flexes like that, eventually you go, yeah, that was me.
Yeah,
bring it on.
Right,
because that's going to continue to happen. Like that's the whole point. That's why you did it, right?
Right. You would flex. Yeah, you would have. Right. I'm not flexing for no reason.
If they don't eventually come out and say, yeah, that was us because we're trying to avoid war or whatever, or we're trying to show that war is a bad idea, because they've said it before. War with Iran is suicide. Mm-hmm. They've said it before. So I wouldn't put it past either government to do this. It's just the United States has a reason to continue to say it wasn't us. Iran really eventually will fall out of reasons to say it wasn't them.
They don't have a reason. I mean, they kind of have a reason not to say now. You look at what the nature of a flex is. You want somebody.
It'd be a Putin flex.
Right.
You do it. It's pretty obvious it was you, and you still go, no, that wasn't me.
No.
So
I wasn't trying to do that. What are you talking about?
What? No, that was someone else that has my stuff.
Okay.
So I'm saying that it could be, it's up for grabs as far as responsibility goes. It's just as far as Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States, whether or not it was through proxy, they all have a reason to, until the day they die, say, no, that wasn't us. Iran eventually, if you're getting ready to do war, and that's what you're trying to, say is that you don't want war with us because we can do this. Mm-hmm. Eventually, you got to be like, yeah, we did that, right? So that's where I leave it, I guess.
Yeah, I gotcha. That's where I'm gonna leave it as well. There's a lot that's gonna come of this, and this is not gonna be the last time we talk about it. So with that being said, y'all make sure you check out us on SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you get your podcasts.
All the links are at www.thedeadcenterpodcast.com.
Absolutely, man. Check us out. Check out the store. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. And with that being said, share. Absolutely. Share us to your friends. And I'm Trip.
And I'm Jim.
This is Dead Center, where we try to conversate, not constant hate, and get to the point. Love y'all. See y'all next time.
Peace.
Common ground, never middleman, understand. This is Trip and Jim, we do what we want, you do what you can. Can you comprehend? If I think, then therefore I am. This is not a test, y'all should've came with a plan. I'ma stand on this conversation, ain't no constant hating. You need to get to the point, and we bringing the navigation. If it's a fork in the road, we'll make a lane in the grass.
You are now tuned in to the Dead Center Podcast.